Hello, welcome everybody. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle, and Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books. Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore, and I'm joined tonight by Sumita Chakraborty and Taylor Johnson, both of whom are amazing poets, and they're celebrating their debut poetry collections with us tonight. So Sumita's debut poetry collection is called Arrow, and it's a literary philosophical exploration of the unknown and the unpredictability of life. These poems challenge gender and race-based violence, ecological devastation, grief, and mourning, full of ecstatic and scholarly curiosity about humanity's paradoxical tendencies. Arrow is a love letter to a flawed world. So welcome, Sumita. And joined with Sumita is Taylor Johnson. And Taylor Johnson's debut book is Inheritance. It is a Black sensorium, a chapel of color and sound that speaks to spaciousness, surveillance, identity, desire, and transcendence. Influenced by everyday moments of Washington, D.C. living, the poems live outside of the outside and beyond the language of categorical difference, inviting anyone listening to listen a bit closer. Inheritance is about the self-struggle with definition and assumption, and each poem is a practice in feeling rapture, deeply observing the world, and then seeing otherwise. So I know we're in for a treat tonight. I want to let folks know who are watching at home that you can click this teal button right at the bottom of the screen to purchase both of the books. You also can drop a question in the Ask a Question area. So I'm going to pop off here, and we're gonna welcome Taylor to go ahead and start us out tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my book Inheritance. Came out last week, 1 week ago today. And I'll just read some poems from it. Thanks for listening. Since I quit that internet service, I'm thinking more about the transitive properties in books, the words, the palimpsest of images accruing in my brain, but more immediately, the book in my hand, the cover worn at one end from sweat and gripping it when it comes close, close as in when I stood up, let one deep exhale when I came to the lines of all fearless happiness from which reaches my life I sing, and find it underlined by a beloved stranger. It's like turning the record over, knowing you're hearing what I'm hearing, easing up on the edge of the chair. It's like we're holding hands now at the edge of a white silence from which we are to make a music of our being here, of being moved, wherein our music complements and holds close each other's sound in the wet room of the tree I met you in. Nothing is said about the water where the fearless trees angled toward and against the light that did fall on me, made much of me, light that sings through me, so I'm singing. Nocturne, what was rampant in me was not wisteria, perhaps decay or loss of reflection. No one like me gets old, or so I thought, even as I watched the days fade into each other. Was I no one? Which phrase means a grown-up girl, mica gilded, pure myth, gone. Thoreau might say I was trying to find the door to nothingness, that the wild was already in me. However, I walked out my bed to find my skin, only to return moon-drunk, bramble-laden, stripped to sinew, a broken syntax. No denying how I got here. I laid down among the tall grass and came up a specter. I came up everywhere. Bolaño blued. The forest is bordered by the highway to the west and the railroad tracks to the east. Here, like a dead man, I never sleep. I'm the moon, soon the sea darkening in apology. My sickness is antithetical, my accomplice or attempt, pride, rage, violence. For a long time I wondered what English meant, if it was worth its weight in enlightenment, everything slow and asthmatic, everything disgustingly still, frozen somewhere in the air. Maybe that's why I can't express want I what, two words strung together. Maybe that's why I lived alone and did nothing for 3 years. Loneliness is an aspect of human authorization, verbal egotism. I write to understand stillness, not to praise. To name is to please, to keep awake. All pleas to the highway, swells, bursts. I'm going to show a film now. I'm going to show a film now. Yesterday, to keep awake, I dreamed I live inside the agitation of silence. A hollow building in Barcelona, the abandoned Mediterranean, blue, a tree turning the lights on and off. Occasionally it shook, the monkey applauding in the corner. Fade to black. Everything gleams like the wind in the rocks. The sad stories I must tell you. The gesture that never came. The trigger pulled at the worst possible moment. Audience. Club 2718. Because I don't have the juice or enough gold anything to enter, a room that occasionally exists inside of me is the poorly lit dance floor of Club 2718. Thirst is a way of knowing, not knowing. I was on a gin-fueled hunt for big asses and music I could cry to. A woman almost twice my age asks where I've been, and she shuts the door. Like any American, what haunts me is my addiction to private property, not time or blackness. I want to love no one, in particular the way I say I love my woman when she's in the doorway and mad at me. There were days I believed my grandfather owned my grandmother, kept her overfed and out of the sun in the back room. Occasionally, a room exists inside of me where Johnny Hartman and John Coltrane's One and Only Love plays on repeat. On repeat, too, is a video of my grandfather dancing a Limberlake shuffle and singing across the wall to my grandmother. To love like him is to be a student of regret. To abide by regret is to watch grief turn to ecstasy. I wept in the winter when I left my woman. I wept in the heat when she came back. West 177th and Broadway. All night you eyed the man I wanted to be. My jaw flexed tight. Anger slipped into desire. Easily he would rise. Easily you would disperse. Pleasure made into light. What you want under him, I put on to amuse. I, your worked supplicant. Yes, love is looking away. My desire, greened in your dismissal, was technicolor and twilight made and never turning off. The city air hung humid above our charade. What need I could feel to transubstantiate, to unravel. This is a review for Blue and Green by Miles Davis. You know the song Blue and Green? Hope you do. It's good. It's a good song. It's a review for that song. It's raining, has to be raining. Someone in the corner room is in love with you. Loves you enough to touch her body, wants you to watch, pull up a chair. The horn asks, how long has it been since? And there are a number of feelings you're in need of. You're not sadness, but near. Down one road in your mind, you're walking alone. Down another, everyone is your wife. The horn asks temperance, obedience. In the corner room, the daybed pressed to spark against the wall. She came. When you leaned in to know about it, you wish you would have slapped your hand away, wished to unhear your name falling out of her. Art movie. Red is a secret in the trees. The train passes through the trees in Alabama. Red earth, red earth. The winter light consumes the field. The light silvers, the light relieves. The light thrown as dust upon the field. I put my ear in. I crack an egg and a saxophone that tells on me, yells at me, comes out. No yoke. The train hollers to stop. The train stops, still loads new passengers, but the conductor won't let me get off and kiss you. You know that's what I haunted to do. The stage is the window circle between us, the emergency exit door. I keep you in my ear and give you how I'm doing and what I want to eat were I not on a train. You and your white boots. You tell me what else could come out of an egg. Women all the way down, holding waists. The train is a place going by, strictly passing through. I touch a stranger's wrist going back to my seat. The whole train becomes a garment I put on. I touch indiscriminately. I can't stay, I tell the dog, waving from your convertible. None of the windows open. I held your gaze until I couldn't. In the previous scene, I took you to the slip until we were shining tunnels for sound. I took your sound for my name, never asked what I called myself. All right, I'll just read like a few more if that's cool. Black existential exegesis. This engine and cog business is wigged out. I want nothing we're owed from the ship gig, thence the land whereon modern sound weaned off our cowrie and cachet aged conjure. Land whereon our woe is chic and wanted. Shout out to every nigga cajoled into winging it in a crowd, crowing about being the hewer and the hewer's subject. Oh, my aching shore choir due upon our ochre echo throughout this land, this cadence gag, our ego greeted upon and caged. Grace is our odd crowd which encores green and geodes. Shout out to every nigga dodging age by ignoring human genre fiction gore. Ergo, we're nowhere, reneging on being owned and renewed, weighing nothing like race. Shout out to every nigga eroding off the edge of something else, gossiping in the air. I forget about money, watching the clouds over 8th and Ingraham. The clouds, a rhubarb colored ship in the sky. To my right, it all grays out. The bats emerging now from the chimneys. The bats listening for the cicadas' echo. Echo is a way to create space, is a metaphor for time. Time for the cop to move along. I think watching the cop watch me from my porch. Fuck 12. The robin on the wire vine, the wire eye competing with the bats for cicadas, the robin competing reds with the sky a money for the cicadas, a way to make space, time. The cicadas sounding out the future through repetition. A friend says to spend nothing is to keep flexibility in your hands, to keep your youth. Money, the sound of decay. Money, the repetition of waste. This next one, it begins with a line from the poet and theorist Fred Moten from this book called Black and Blur, which I was in study with a friend. You know, we were reading it together when it came out, and there's this line where Fred Moten says the black proletarianization of the bourgeois form is X, Y, and Z, and I was, trying to understand what he meant, and my friend was like, "Oh, that's like Kanye West sampling gospel music for his rap songs," and then I was like, "Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me." And then I thought about it for another minute, and I was like, "That's not correct." So I wrote this. The black proletarianization of the bourgeois form isn't Kanye West gospel samples. O death, your singular eye. My mother speaks the king's English, makes quiche, makes clove pomanders in winter, pawned her flute, cleaned my elementary school classroom. What is hers? Brilliant song, my mother's sotto voce in her chair, asking for touch. It is drowning, she means, not freedom. I swam fine, don't you get it? Oh, death, my mother is elegant, alive, entering the blue hole of evening alone. You could reach into the frame, pull her out. Oh, death, I've been crueler, I've watched. I'll just read two more if that's cool. Hope it's cool. Whereas I come into to talk with my shadow, from you I've not hid my face. For in the morning I make and am made by you, beautiful projection, boy in the mirror, boy in my mind. I separate my flesh from my flesh to become more like you, to drown in your holdings. O young lord of my desire, you are the light I ride toward, I run from. I eat less and avoid being hailed, anonymous interstitial prince of my undoing, redeemer of my yes. I want to grow into you and then abandon your imprecise naming. I am bequeathed violence, your inheritance, and your rough glamour. I am made to tarry here with you, thus illumined by your tenuous light. Thank you for listening. It's my last one. A kind of wildness descends, and across the expanse the attendant wind drones its one fecund song. When I'm so tender in the thick of rot, I let all the morning wet spread a plague across this threadbare vessel that holds in what hums, what rushes beneath. Give as the ground gives. Make of me your groveling tongue, your dust, your possessed, possessing, never let up. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're gonna bring up Sumita, and you're set. Welcome.
Thanks so much. Can everyone hear me? I guess I can't see you, so if you can't, then yikes.
No, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks, ER, for the intro and for having us. I lived in Atlanta, as I was saying in the green room before, for 7 years, and Charis was one of my favorite spots, and it's great to be virtually back. Taylor, thank you so much for that incredible reading. It is a joy and a supreme honor to be your pressmate and to be on this virtual book tour circuit with you. Everyone, please buy Inheritance. It is amazing. So I'm going to read 2 or 3, depending on how long some of them take. Poems are unruly beasts and move through time differently each time, so we'll see how it goes. The first poem I'm going to read is the first poem in the book, and it's a long poem. There are a couple things I just want to tell you briefly about it as a whole. The book is about living in the aftermath of violence, but an aftermath that also recognizes that there is no real such thing as after, even though there is such a thing as after. The main violence that autobiographically instigates the book for me is domestic violence, of which I'm a survivor. And the beginning of the book finds the speaker, aka me, but better spoken than I usually am on a day-to-day basis, in a place of finding herself articulating rage and wanting to take up space for the first time in her/my life. Because so much in the beginning of the book is still so very raw. There's a lot of language in this particular poem, like language of colonization, language of different forms of power that I and the speaker later in the book don't entirely stand by. So this first poem is really kind of a coming of age story that explores what it means to try to express power and try to express anger and the desire to be on earth and to be heard and to be respected without really having terribly many healthy frameworks for that, or ethical frameworks for that, you might say. That's pretty much all you need to know about it, except I frequently reference a number of different poets in here, and I reference them by their first name because I like to pretend we are pals or tight enough to be enemies by first name. That has a lot to do with the way that I think that for me as a person, I really did come of age in a big way through literature. So that's what they're doing in there. And there are also some lines in here from Shakespeare's play Titus Andronicus, which is one of his roughest and bloodiest and goriest of plays, which goes back to what I was saying earlier about power and authority and icky versions of it and all that. All right. It's called Marigolds. When I picture Robert, he is in the public garden watching setting suns like the ill-fated king turn all to gold. Robert with the swans, Robert under the statue of Washington, Robert amid the tulips. Without a childhood home, I made for myself a house of orchids, of sewer grates with fishes on them, of forsythia and maple trees. Of this I am sure. When Robert crossed the bridge between Boston and Cambridge, he saw Poseidon. In late summer, he could tell that underneath the sailboats is a god, mighty and to be feared. In midwinter, he alone knew the ice could not long contain that god. In the pipes in his home, he heard the gurgle of illness. I smell illness in the riotous orchid blooms. What are midnight trees? I think that once I knew one such tree, if it is the kind owls gather on nightly to fight, barking, eyes dim with bloodlust and the hiss of feathers. I built for myself a house of orchids with a cave underneath, a cave shaped into an armory brimming with tarantula hawks, giant sparrow bees, and admiral butterflies. In place of stalactites hang treeless, inextricable roots, O sacred receptacle of my joys. The day I first learned the word Argonaut, I wrote it in a poem. I searched the seas for one. I searched the skies. I searched a painting. In the painting, I found the word spears, which I drove slowly into my father's ribs. He I eulogized and he I resurrected, reaching again for the spears. I have seen countless full moons fail. Each of them hollowed, flooding heart first, the craw-faced light, the bracken underneath, then the sound of a wounded owl, a soft, sudden darkness in my throat. Oh, how this villainy. In morning, the owls are replaced by hawks. From one angle, broad-winged hawks seem to have two pairs of hollow eyes. We are looking for you, say the kettles of satellites to the humans lost, to the plane disappeared, to what lives 30 miles below the surface of Enceladus. On this morning in April, Hikesun 01, Ocean Shield, and HMS Echo hear a thump that sounds like the colors inside an oyster shell. The frequency of the noise can make a heart stop. Anxious as seaweed, over the sides of the ship creep hordes of trembling locators. The satellites stare with breath hitching in their throats. Between the wine-colored hull of Ocean Shield and Enceladus lies 8 times the distance between Earth and Sun. 30 miles below the surface of that geyser-ridden, tiger-striped Saturnian moon lies life, report the satellites. The hawk steals their 2 pairs of eyes up toward alien oceans on other planets. What I am is all that I can carry, wrote Deborah. What can I carry? All that I caught, I left behind. All that I missed, I carried. The hawks are not looking toward alien oceans. I am. I am looking to alien men and women. I picture hurtling into them by turn to serve my lust. I picture us bent sideways, impaled, contorted, and screaming. I picture the different shades of a moan. The word bed fills the four eyes in my mind with the color gold, gold of the ill-fated king and the garden sunset, gold glinting in a decaying tooth, goldenrod, a haze of pollen, the dragon's treasure, a long necklace of many fine gold chains reaching down to a woman's hips. Young woman walks down to the river of gold. Young woman walks down to the river and drowns. In the word bed, also joyously wail bed, the color of ashen near death, bed, the fleshly color of bodies broken for good, bed, the color blue of heart-stopped lips. Oh, here I lift this one hand up to heaven. The ghosts of the poisoned dogs live in the piano. The ghost of my mother, still living, lives in her excised tumor and staghorn kidney stone. The ghost of my ability to love without grief, still living, lives in this poem. All my pockets filled with stones, in the river I'll be found. Why then I am the devil's dam. Dangle me from a cliff 12,000 feet above sea. Oh, speak with possibilities. Build me a skin of glass to cover the Grand Canyon. Throw me on it. Summon 1,000 wilding mares. Restrain them with massive chains, foot-long links of hardened steel. When the chains buck from fracture, let the mares stampede the glass. Bid them trample my body. Watch from a great distance as the glass cracks. Watch us beasts entangle. Watch me take a hoof to the mouth, to the skull, to the groin. Hear us squeal and bark and howl, calling out as wretches do to failing life. When at last we 1,001 blood-filled creatures reach the bottom of the canyon, throw yourself in. My voice in your ear will tell you that you were meant to die like this, a beautiful and inelegant dive onto a field of reds, some bright and sun-kissed, some dark and pulp-dashed, your and our blood across the burnt orange schist. See, oh, see what I have done. I fear neither the sight of nor the word for blood. HMAS Albatross has joined the search for the plane. It is May now, and there is no sign of it. The detritus lied. The home I made is of orchids, forsythia, barbed wire, and burnt metal. In the bedroom, I planted what I imagine a midnight tree to be. Its roots join the treeless roots in the armory beneath. Ravished, my hands cut off, my tongue cut out, I put my home under the wisteria, craving owls at war under thick purple overhang. No territory there is that is not mine. The albatross, it is mine. Enceladus is mine. Your innermost thigh beneath the wisteria, mine. Poseidon is mine, and the river between Boston and Cambridge and the one that wends through Georgia floods into the Gulf. I am dreaming of a monument to moments colonized by theaters of the imagination. Oh, monstrous. The O of a mouth without a tongue, the O of two pairs of lips clasped, starving on one another, horns and cry of hounds. The ballet in my deadly standing eye is the arrow's flight into the neck, the horse's tumble into the canyon, a nation's search for a single tiger with quills in its neck, a spilt cloud of felled bees, the elephant's horror in the flock of red-billed birds, feathered locusts who from their first breath form trembling caverns with their mouths, their aggregate force snapping branches off of trees. The orchestra plays low drum beats, a single singer carving the melody. Do not, I pray, promise me an untroubled lake. Take me instead to the rivers with vengeful gods under steaming and frozen waters. Take me instead for the stag, the rifle, and the hunter. Promise me unending days in which I can picture, then picture again, a fire whirl, the slowness of the sea drinking a ferry or a plane, the gasps of air bubbles around carapaces, the moons of Saturn. I myself am hell's, and I prize them as if they were the rarest blooms. Promise me I will always reach again for spears, await the horses on the glass above the gaping hollow O of the earth. All is lost, flee this house. So chants James's Ouija. Or perhaps in the palace of time, our lives are a circular stair, and I am turning, writes Lucille's ghost-guided hand. Always in my mouth I hold the head of an axe with its bit at the back of my throat. Oh heavens, can you hear a man groan? Here nothing breathes but we phased and hungry, oh wondrous thing. Worlds such as this were not thought possible to exist, writes the astronomer. It is June. Deep beneath those golden waves of the river I'll be found. My sister has joined the list of those I mourn. Her ghost lives in each powder-winged moth. In the ballet, the stage fills with a troupe of dancers in dusty gold skirts, shoes asphyxiation blue, hair the tones of flesh. Center stage are 6 dancers who wear only red, moving in unison so they throb as one bloodied yoke. The troupe around them shudders, as though in blissful death throes the single singer quiets. The orchestra breaks down its instruments. For my brethren slain, I ask a sacrifice, O barbarous, beastly villains like myself. Die. Die saying please, die longing, die helpless, die with your eyes fixed to the most treacherous side of a mountain, to newborn stars, to plains not found. Die with your throat stuffed so that each moment hereafter is a dream of a gasp. Die so that my midnight tree might grow new branches. Die like a sapling struck by lightning in an ash-ridden and still smoldering field. Die amid the tulips. Die smelling the orchids I grow. Die in the mass of horses and a pied flock of shrieking birds. From the oceans, creatures great and small take to the land. From the land, each parachuted seed takes to the sky. From within my armory comes a scent melodious and unearthly. A strain of moths, black, flies as though sewn each to each at the wing. Their flight path blooms dark into the gray air like a print from a silvered glass plate. Soon we will learn our bodies are formed of dead stars, so that if we made incisions from breastbone to rectum, the caves within would reveal themselves to house celestial ash. As the stag, I fear the mouth of the rifle. As the rifle, I point my mouth deadly toward you. As the hunter, I execute myself so that I may feast. Worlds such as this were not thought possible to exist. My lord, I aim a mile beyond the honeyed moon. So in many ways, what I describe as a journey in the aftermath of violence is also a journey of really, or is really fundamentally a journey of learning how to become and to take ownership of the fact that I am someone who cares about love and kin and community, even though all of those things have been weaponized against me or the speaker from the beginning of mine or her life. And so the book really tells a story about redefining words, redefining relationships, redefining the idea of love. So what I'm going to do now is read one short prose poem from the middle. The third section of the book has a lot of kind of prose poems called essay on blah, where my speaker is really thinking through different aspects of her vocabulary and how she wants them to grow. And then I'm going to read the very, very last poem so you have a sense of how that journey ends. If you want the middle, you're going to have to check out the book. Or don't. I don't know. Thanks for being there. Essay on Thunder. A woman made wary by misfortune, writes Stendhal, will not experience this soul-shaking upheaval. Soul-shaking upheaval means something like what he elsewhere calls the curse of passionate love, although my sense is that love here is better understood as either arousal or torpor, and that distinctions in such matters are, while necessary and true, ultimately mythological. Stendhal's own argument also entails a critique of terminology. Of thunderbolts, he says, that ridiculous word ought to be changed, but nevertheless, the thing love at first sight does exist. When I first copied down those sentences from Stendhal, I wrote instead of upheaval the non-word unheaval, which I now think of as upheaval's uncompromised sibling. On the ceiling of my gynecologist's exam room is a watercolor of a lurid hummingbird with a few centimeters of beak inside a flower. A hummingbird's beak is understood to be a sheath for the bird's tongue, which means the tongue is a knife. Hummingbirds use their beaks to feed as well as to do battle. There has not yet been a study of what their tongues do in such times of war. And now the very last poem in the book and in my reading today. Thank you all so much for listening and for being there. I really appreciate it. This poem is called O. Stars are not the end, but the beginning. A bird is to its throat as a promise is to its sharp edge. I wanted to make for you a sun shower. Instead, I've made for you a mortal thing. Writing is knowing how to cut. There is a space in my body that did not exist when I began this book. It is a window. When I next speak, I will do so through that window. Please leave the window unlatched. When I next speak, it will be with changed lips. I wonder what their color will be. Finally, she enlarges the figure to a grand scale and cuts off its head. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So now I'm going to bring Taylor back up as well. And if folks have questions, you are welcome to put them in the chat. But, you know, I always kind of think poetry stands on its own and like it's not necessarily great to ask too many questions of poets. But as a bookseller, I'm always interested in the kinds of books you read and the kind of influences you have. So, you know, could y'all shout out just some poets or some books in particular that are either influenced you when you were writing these collections or are, you know, maybe speaking to you right now?
One book for me that's been incredibly important is Across the Mutual Landscape by Christopher Gilbert, which won the Walt Whitman Prize in 1983. It was his only book that was published while he was living. Yeah, that's true. And then there was like a Grey Wolf put out a, you know, kind of like a posthumous collection that had like some selected poems as well as Across Mutual Landscape. He's a great poet. You should check him out. He's really important to me. Bob Kaufman for sure. I read like throughout the writing of this book, I think almost all of Renee Gladman's books, except for the ones in the Ravka series that hadn't come out yet. So like the book Juice, I read a bunch and I really love that book. And these days I've been really falling in love with Paul Celan, German poet, who I really dig. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I could probably go on for much longer than anyone would be interested in hearing from me on poets and other writers who have been really important to me, especially during the writing of this book. Hold on, my cats are scrapping. You guys, I'm doing a thing. Never mind, they're leaving. During the writing of this book, it was really kind of massive, in part because this book took like 10 years to write. So essentially everything I had read for like a decade ended up in some way informing something about this book. So I'll dodge that question because that would take forever to try to answer, and I'd always be unhappy about how incomplete I had it, and instead say that some recent things I've been reading. I am doing a lot of visual poetry right now. That's one of my series for the second project. However, that ends up taking shape is a series of visual poems. So I've been reading and rereading Diana Coyne Nguyen's Ghost of.
It's a great book.
It's incredible. And I've also been spending a lot of time with Susan Howe. Most recently, I read Kazim Ali's The Voice of Sheila Chandra, which is a really fascinating read, and a fellow Alice James read, as well as Eduardo Corral's Guillotine, which taught me more than I know how to currently say. So shout outs to Kazim and to Eduardo for those.
Those are great. So folks watching at home, all of those books available, all the ones that are in print are available. Charis, we're happy to get them for you. So as you're, you know, it seems like some folks during the pandemic, their creativity has exploded, and then many more people are just sort of shut down and depressed. How is the pandemic affecting your creativity right now in your writing practice?
I think I go through waves, you know what I mean? It's been interesting having this book come out in this moment. Yeah, I don't really know really what to think of it yet because I'm still inside of it. Um, but in terms of creativity, I think I do go through waves of feeling particularly sad. And some of that is just like my own, waves of depression that do happen to me. And some of it's more environmental, you know what I mean? But, I think recently I started drinking coffee again, which has kickstarted some nice late night coffee thoughts. So, yeah, that's been fun.
I live in awe of people who can go without coffee at all. I mean, I know it would probably be a good idea for me to wean off, but I don't even want to be around me during those attempts.
Yeah, it's not fun, like it's I felt like it was necessary, but I missed it a lot. And now I'm just like, it's part of my life. I don't really care about anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in many ways my answer echoes Taylor's. It goes through ebbs and flows. For me, my mental health issues are usually much more prone toward mania than depression. As opposed, the other side, or the other spectrum of feeling is not something that I usually experience very often. My brain kicks into like fight mode and just produces a ton of stuff. The pandemic has not been such a circumstance. It's definitely been more depression inducing than inspiration or mania inducing at all. So I think, and also I'm just kind of a contrarian. So in the first days of the pandemic, people had those bajillions of tweets like, oh, Shakespeare wrote this during this, and why will you do it? And I hate that gesture so much because I, first of all, hate the productivity grind. Second of all, I hate fetishizing suffering. Third, it just seems flat out ridiculous. So I think as a contrarian, part of me wants to be like, no, I'm not writing anything and it's a protest. The truth of the matter is that I am writing stuff. It's much slower than I think it would ordinarily be and much lower in volume. But in terms of ebbs and flows, that kind of just mirrors what in general happens to me more broadly.
Yeah, I also hated that impulse from people to be like, it's your fault if you're not producing the next great American novel or whatever. I was like, you know what? Actually, we're living through a really crappy time collectively. Let's all be gentle with one another.
Yeah, anyone who thinks that, I mean, I feel like I would write the worst novel in the history of time. I don't really have much of a head for prose narrative in that way. So anyone who says that deserves my attempt at the great American novel, which will be hideous.
Yeah, I mean, fair, totally fair. So I see a request in the chat for us to put the authors that y'all listed. So I want to get those down. Taylor, can we go back to you and I'll try and get them in order?
I said Christopher Gilbert. The book is called Across the Mutual Landscape. And I think I mentioned Juice by Renee Gladman, as well as the Ravika series. And then I think Paul Celan. Yeah.
I may be misspelling these though, so feel free. Is it S-A-L-O-N or
S-C-E-L-A-N?
All right. And Sumita, were you? Oh yeah, you got it. Perfect.
Yeah, I dropped mine. Diana Coy Nguyen, Susan Howe, Eduardo Corral, and Kazem Ali.
Thank you. So some people like to talk about the work that they're currently engaged with, and you sort of mentioned it, Sumita, but do y'all want to share anything more about kind of where you're at creatively right now, specifically on any projects?
I mean, my constant project is called How to Survive America as an artist. So that's my durational art installation with my life.
Very real.
But also, I'm looking for 2 telephone booths for a project that I am working on.
All right, like old school, regular, like
regular old school. Mm-hmm.
All right. We'll put the word out. Get in touch with Taylor, America.
Yeah. America.
I'm dying to know more about that project. Yeah, so toward a second book, I'm still just letting kind of the writing tell me what it feels like doing and what kinds of challenges I feel like setting myself. So I'm not 100% sure what shape that second book will take. But I have a series of visual poems that are inspired by surgical photographs taken of a hysterectomy that I had in 2018, as well as a series of prose poems that are not loosely, why did I say loosely, are directly inspired by the Golden Records. I don't know if you all know about this, but NASA's 1977 Golden Records was like a compilation intended as a compilation of the greatest hits of humanity. And they were supposed to serve that purpose for any aliens or whatever who happened to encounter the records. Accordingly, they left a great deal of things out. Like there's a great deal of detail, like sounds of humans chewing or whatever. But they left out explicit things about sex. They left out a number of kinds of sex. They left out war. They left out racism. They left out like a whole bunch of stuff about humans. So my prose poem series is titled, they're all titled The B-Sides of the Golden Records, Track Whatever, and then a subtitle for what it's about. And it's kind of imagining the things that would only be on the B-sides or perhaps not even on the B-sides of those kinds of records. So that's where I'm at poetically.
I'm obsessed with the Golden Records and like have the box set on vinyl because I think they're super fascinating. So I cannot wait to read that when you're done. I hope
That's
you'll come
amazing. I wish it was still possible for me to be in Atlanta because I would ask you to please play them. I've never heard the actual vinyls.
They are amazing. I think for a while you could get them from NASA. So I don't know. Maybe they are still out in the world somewhere. This was a few years ago. It was the 50th anniversary that they produced the vinyl commemorative set. And my partner,
I'm going to stalk eBay. Yeah, they have the digital files of all the audio and all the photographs and all that online on NASA's website, and I've been using those. But it would be incredible to see the actual vinyl.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a very cool project, and I think anything that purports to be sort of representative of all humanity, like obviously is designed to fail, but also tells us so much about who made the object, right? So a bunch of astronauts and NASA white dudes only got so much perspective on the universe. So
exactly. I mean, there's also a part of the thing that does kind of speak to me in this particular moment. Jimmy Carter was president at the time, and he said about the records to the potential aliens, "We are trying to survive our time so we can live into yours." And again, who the question of that we is just not a we that I recognize and I chime with. But that sentiment, I too am trying to survive my time so I can see another.
I think it's wild that they wrote in English, like they assume that the aliens are going to understand this one language. You know what I mean? That's so wild.
There's so much about it, and there's so many. Like on some levels, there's a lot of thought about like music and like all the different kinds of music that are really key. And there's as much attention to music and to animal sounds and stuff that there is to English, but there are very few other representations of other cultures. So it's this weird like myopic idea.
They have hello in a bunch of different languages on the records, but that's about as far as they got. And they still have it keyed to like human language for the most part when these are like aliens or the intended audience. So what are you going to... Anyway.
There's something really exciting or interesting about the idea of just like we're trusting that aliens A are out there and B are interested in American culture. Like, all of those things. I don't know. I've always found it so interesting. So I think that's a great point.
Thanks.
Well, thank you both so much. This was really fun. And folks, go ahead and click this green button down at the bottom center of your screen. Buy Arrow and Inheritance from Charis Books and More. We really do appreciate every time you buy from your independent feminist bookstore. We also are a nonprofit, so I always send out this little thing, which just all of our events are free and open to the public. But if you're able to throw $1, $5 our way, it helps us pay for this platform and support this work. Because we're gonna he looks like keeping on this platform into 2021 for sure. So it allows us to do great virtual events, which we're really grateful for. But all the support we can get, it helps us. So thank you for considering that. And the final thing is I'll be adding captions to this and putting it up on YouTube. So please share that and let folks know. Our YouTube is just YouTube.com/Charis. So come find us and follow us there. There are a lot of great programs. So Sumita and Taylor, I hope that y'all will stay safe and as sane as possible in this time and well. And one day we'll get together in real space.
Yeah, I
Thank
hope
you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Take care and enjoy the rest of your robust tour.
See ya.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.